The top stories: government announces readiness to take all proper action for the well-being of Ethiopians. And at least 70 people have died in South African violence. Hello and many thanks for joining us. You're watching Addis News Hour from the Ethiopian Broadcasting Corporation. With the news, I'm Tabitha John. Do stay with us. Ethiopian government announced that it is ready to take all the proper action to the well-being of Ethiopians and the nation. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed blamed the TPLF for violating the unilateral ceasefire in Tigray, calling all Ethiopians to back the Ethiopian National Defense Force. Kasahon Chani has more.
Through the recently declared unilateral humanitarian ceasefire, the government of Ethiopia has shown to the world its good intentions for the well-being of the people of the Tigray region. The federal government believed the ceasefire would cease hostilities and give chances to farmers to employ the rainy season, while the people get humanitarian assistance without alleged impediments. The government of Ethiopia has paid sacrifice in declaring the ceasefire, and it was a choice made consciously to give peace a last chance. But through various forms, the TPLF chose violence to peace. It has demonstrated that it cannot survive without engaging in conflict. It has continued to use child soldiers by numbing them through drugs. The Ethiopian Defense Force is obliged to protect these kids. The ceasefire could not be desired fruit due to people who could not appreciate the sacrifice that the government of Ethiopia has paid for the sake of the people of Tigray. Given the responsible actions of the TPLF that poses a great danger to the sovereignty of the country, the federal government, through mobilizing the people of Ethiopia, is determined to curb this threat. We will facilitate the humanitarian works and defend the country from the joint attacks by its domestic and external enemies. The TPLF junta was laminating the government of Ethiopia had been using starvation as a weapon of war. However, when the federal government declared the unilateral humanitarian ceasefire, the junta soon forgot the famine accusations and intensified its military activities. The international community also soon forgets its pronouncements on looming famine in the Tigray region. They said nothing while the junta recruits children as soldiers. They even tend to point fingers at the government of Ethiopia, even when the junta makes humanitarian corridors as centers of military conflicts. Taking all matters that unfold after the declaration of the unilateral humanitarian ceasefire, the federal government would like to announce that it is ready to take all the proper action to the well-being of Ethiopians and the nation. The government calls on the people of Ethiopia to protect itself from influences of unsubstantiated information and the propaganda machine of the junta, whose remaining power is just fabricating falsified information. The people of Ethiopia should understand that our domestic and external enemies are working in unison to sow dissent and mistrust among us. The government urges the people of Ethiopia to stand together and continue supporting the Ethiopian National Defense Force in every way possible and defend the country's sovereignty and reverse the threat posed by internal and external enemies of the country.
Ethiopian National Defense Force top leadership, Lieutenant General Bacha Dabele, called upon the general public to intensify support to the military in the fight against TPLF. He vowed to repel attacks after rebels in the disputed northern region of Tigray launched a fresh offensive. Kasahun Chani has more.
In a latest press statement, top leadership of the Ethiopian National Defense Force, Lieutenant General Baja Dabali said the TPLF junta violated the unilateral ceasefire that the government called for. He further said the Ethiopian National Defense Force will make its level best to maintain the sovereignty of the country, calling the general public to intensify support to the military force. Baja underscored the TPLF terrorist group is making havoc in the country with the intention of crumbling its national sovereignty. He also said the government will never tolerate such irresponsible acts instigated by the group.
The latest press statement of the U.S. State Department is said to be an indication of unnecessary external intervention on Ethiopia's domestic affairs. Talking to ETV English, a political expert, Alemayo Areda, said the U.S. and other European countries are intervening on the domestic affairs of Ethiopia. Habtamu Ashagri reports.
Stretching for 2,250 kilometers or 1,398 miles.
The Red Sea and Gulf of Aqaba is a center of attraction in many developed nations. Most of these countries are turning their attention to control the region, it was learned. In an exclusive interview with ETV English, Alemayo Areda, who is a well-known politician in Ethiopia, said the recent U.S. State Department press statement indicates the plan of U.S. to pressurize Ethiopia. The U.S. government is also forgetting its moral responsibility by rejecting Ethiopia's role in the fight against anti-peace elements in the Horn region.
The United States government, especially some people within the State Department, are using the Tigray issue in general and the TPLF issue in particular to pressurize the Ethiopian government. This is what we have to recognize. You see, otherwise, when the United States labeled Al-Shabaab and ISIS as terrorist organizations, Ethiopia was immediately on board, calling these organizations terrorists. And now the Ethiopian government, a credible, legitimate government of Ethiopia, in its House of Representatives, has already declared the TPLF as a terrorist organization. In fact, America should have a moral responsibility of recognizing this.
The U.S. State Department is sensationalizing the domestic concern of Ethiopia and ordering the nation to respect the constitution by rejecting the pillar of international laws. According to Alemayo, America needs to stop to recognizing the state of Tigray as independent country.
They were insisting that the Ethiopian government should respect the constitution and the border lines within Ethiopia. It's just funny because it is like, for instance, Ethiopia discussing the border between Arizona and Texas. America would have laughed about this. But they are discussing about the border between the Amhara regional state, and the Tigray regional state, both of whom are part of Ethiopia, not independent countries. So it is the United States is probably very arrogantly treating Tigray as an independent country.
After the unilateral ceasefire decision, the recent TPLF war-provoking act with the state of Amhara comes from the U.S. government pushing factors, the politician remarked. The U.S. government is running to create a loyal partner to compete with China and other developed countries in the Horn region, and they are showing their interest to stop Ethiopia's plan to form Navy in the Red Sea coast.
They want to somehow bring to its knees the Ethiopian government and probably serve as a loyal partner, loyal in brackets, to the United States' interest in the region. Currently, the Chinese are coming very strongly within this Eastern Africa region, where they have a very big military station in Djibouti. So Ethiopia is next, and Ethiopia is building this, the Navy. So America may not be happy about that.
Dechasa Abebe, who is a historian at Addis Ababa University, for his part said the conflict is complicated after the intervention of foreign forces in the state of Tigray.
The things are totally domestic issues or internal Ethiopian issue. But some member of the international community or some countries are trying to make it something regional or to use it as, shall I say, an instrument for extra advantage.
The TPLF forces have been claiming the necessity of ceasefire agreement during the law enforcement operation, but now they are rejecting the unilateral ceasefire agreement made by the federal government.
ልክ እዚህ ሰዎች ሲደርሱ ጦርነትን ያሸነፈ ያህል ነው ስሜት የሚሰማቸው። በጣም በከፍተኛ ሁኔታ ድከሙ ምኑም ረስተውት ያሸናፊነት ስሜት የሚሰማቸው ቦታ ነው።
Welcome back. Agency for Refugee and Returnee Affairs, ARA, announced that it has received reports from different directions regarding attacks on Eritrean refugees by the terrorist TPLF clique. The agency said TPLF claims to demolish the good image of the country in hosting refugees, recalling its decision to relocate refugees to the Amhara state. Jerusalem Bezaha reports.
Thousands of Eritrean refugees live in 4 camps and outside of camps in Tigray state, but currently the refugee camps are reportedly being attacked by TPLF clique, Agency for Refugees and Returnees Affairs said.
What we hear from different sources and what we gather from different information sources is that shows us that there are some security threats, and there are some serious allegations, that the serious reports that reflect some incidents that are bad. For example, some of them are telling us that they are being searched and they are being viewed by TPLF forces as not civilians, but as a target. So where they fear that if they go back, they might be attacked, and they fear that their families would be in danger if they remain in that area.
The director added the agency has been striving to relocate refugees to give a lasting solution to Eritrean refugees.
We had a discussion yesterday with representatives of refugee committees and UNHCR and ARA. So in that discussion, what resonated now and then is that the refugees feel that they are under imminent attack and they are under imminent danger because of the invasion of the TPLF forces of the area. So they were in constant panic and in constant fear, and they, both psychologically and physically, they were tortured. So they were looking out for a better place, and we as government have taken their concerns seriously, and we had tried to find a new location. We identified a certain site in North Gondar zone of Dabat Woreda.
According to the agency, though TPLF clique aims to demolish the good image of the country worldwide through disrupting humanitarian institutions and attacking Eritrean refugees, but Ethiopia has the full capacity to handle such problems in the country. The director stressed some media outlets should report in right way and condemned this terrorist group.
There are a lot of media campaigns to that target Ethiopia and Ethiopian as a nation. The refugee operation is not much different. There are a lot of allegations and a lot of reportings of hearsays. So we have seen that. And also when I come to the refugee operation, of course, most of the damages were orchestrated by the TPLF, but it was framed in a way that they think would reflect back to the government, the federal government of Ethiopia. Of course, what matters most for us is that since these refugees came seeking our protection, we are here to protect them, and we'll do anything that we can, and we'll do anything in our powers to protect their safety. So that's what we are doing. Even in times of active fightings in Western Tigray, we were able to transport nearly 9,000 refugees from western parts of Tigray to Mayan and Harush. We are able to register more than 5,200 refugees in Addis Ababa during the past 2 months. So even in the most challenging times, Ethiopia is proving itself that it cares for the neighbors, and it cares for those who are coming seeking the protection of Ethiopia.
Tasfaun also urged the global community to condemn inhuman acts of the TPLF terrorists.
It has captured most of the reports that are coming out of Tigray and also from the camps, but it didn't single out who the perpetrator is. During the past months, when they believe that the federal government has done something wrong, they were calling the federal government and requesting to respect something that they deem is a principle of international law. So what we are expecting now is for them to do the same, because there shouldn't be any double standard. If a refugee is attacked, whether by the regional government or by federal government, it doesn't matter. So you have to call the actor, you have to call who did it, and you have to condemn the action in the strongest term possible.
Currently, Ethiopia is home to more than 900,000 refugees, mainly from neighboring South Sudan, Somalia, Eritrea, and Sudan.
Ethiopian ambassador to Djibouti, Birhanu Tsaggaye, has received a courtesy visit from his U.S. counterpart, Jonathan Pratt, at his office on Wednesday. During the discussions, Ambassador Birhanu, recalling the declaration of the unilateral ceasefire, noted that it was meticulously studied in advance and executed with the understanding that the people in Tigray region should use their farming season undisturbed. Moreover, the government has ensured the safe withdrawal of the Eritrean forces from the Ethiopian territories and continued to commit itself to provide the necessary humanitarian assistance in the region, added the ambassador. Sadly, the TPLF has continued retaliatory, brutal killings and brought obstacles to efforts to bring normalcy to the region. Ambassador Birhanu, referring to the 6th national election held very recently, highlighted the election's credibility, transparency, and serenity.
For thousands of years, the peoples of the Horn of Africa have revered the mighty Nile. Its spiritual significance to these lands has been enshrined in poetry, music, and spoken word for time immemorial. And in a land that is holy to Christians and Muslims and followers of many faiths, these waters hold a place in the hearts of millions of Africans. And in all this time, the waters have flowed with only a dream of being able to harness and help bring millions of women, children, and men out from darkness. Today, a new dawn is upon us, when a continent can rejoice in unison. The grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam stands as a beacon of hope for all Africans. The use of a hydroelectric dam which does not consume the water, but rather allows it to continue its flow to our brothers and sisters in Sudan and Egypt, will finally allow the lights to turn on in all of the African Nile Basin countries. Since the dawn of time, Ethiopia, who contributes 80% plus of the waters, has used 0%. Today, more than 60% of Ethiopians do not have access to basic electricity. Ethiopia has watched as her soil and minerals be swept away to irrigate the cotton farms of Egypt, while her mothers still carry firewood upon their backs and sit in darkness. The time for a fair and equitable share of the Nile is now. The time for all 11 African nations who feed the Nile to share in its life-giving potential is now. This is truly a dam of inclusivity, of kindness, and of shared prosperity. Light, energy, education, food security, and a chance for prosperity for millions. This is Africa's dam. This is our dam. This is my dam.
Despite the widespread narratives that Ethiopia has huge water resources, the East African nation has massively failed to properly make use of its water resources. Scholars made this remark in an interview with ETV. Lack of proper attention given to the resources and few studies conducted on Ethiopian rivers and other water bodies are some of the reasons to this, it was indicated. Shifarau Lago presents the following story.
Data show that Ethiopia has about 123 billion cubic meters of water. However, since many of its rivers are transboundary, the country managed to make use of only 3% of this. Scholars ETV approached raise a number of factors to this insignificant utilization of water resources, including insufficient information about their invaluable resources.
Ethiopia's water is like rain dripping off an umbrella, with all the drops flowing down to other countries in every direction. So the thing is, though Ethiopia is said to be endowed with huge untapped water resources, it has squarely failed to developing this resource. This is mainly because the old generation has failed to clearly communicate to the young generation the importance of developing this blessing.
Despite the popular catchphrase that Ethiopia is the water tower of Africa, the irony is that Ethiopia is fast tracking to join those nations with shortage of water.
Ethiopia has 110 million people and divide the nation's 123 billion cubic meters of water to this, it will just be around 1,100, which is below the standard, that is 1,500. And this fact, also corroborated by some studies, showed that Ethiopia is joining countries that are water deficient.
Egypt is known for its continual studies on the Nile and its water use, in addition to their unrelenting efforts to teach its citizens on the benefits of the waters. Ethiopia's higher institutions, on the other hand, have insignificant contribution when it comes to studies on Ethiopian rivers. And this calls for revising the nation's curriculum, it was pointed out.
በዩኒቨርሲቲዎች
ምርምሮች ይደረጋሉ። ያ ምርምሮች
Universities conduct various researches based on those annual conferences should be held among Ethiopian higher institutions, and there should also be studies involving neighboring countries and continent-wide. Events and funders should also encourage such studies.
ዝቅተኛ የትምህርት ደረጃ አንስቶ እስከ ዩኒቨርሲቲ ድረስ በካሪኩለሞቻችን ውስጥ የውሃ ምንነትና ስለ ውሃ
New curriculums should be developed which thoroughly deals with water and importance of water from the lowest to the highest educational levels. Next to that, our young generation would fully be made aware of Ethiopia's water resources.
Despite the fact that Ethiopia has big rivers, including the Abai, it has idly let time pass by without getting the benefits it should have had, it was pointed out.
Ethiopian ambassador to Qatar, Samia Zakaria, met with Qatari Foreign Affairs State Minister Sultan bin Saad Al Muraiki on Wednesday. During the meeting, the two reviewed bilateral cooperation between Ethiopia and Qatar. On the occasion, Foreign Affairs State Minister of Qatar, Sultan bin Saad Al Muraiki, reaffirmed support of his country to Ethiopia's right to utilize its natural resources for development purposes. He reiterated that Qatar has unwavering support to Ethiopia's fair and reasonable approach towards the construction of the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. The Qatari Foreign Affairs State Minister further recommended that the issue of GERD should be resolved through the AU-led negotiation.
Ethiopia is building the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, or GERD, on the Nile. GERD will be the 8th largest in the world. Here's why everyone needs to support GERD. First, the filling of the dam is conducted only during heavy rainfall months of July and August, so the dam does not reduce water availability downstream. Second, GERD offers many benefits to Egypt and Sudan, including reduction in floods and evaporation losses. Third, Ethiopia is building this $5 billion dam using its own money. Fourth, GERD brings some fairness to Ethiopia. Ethiopia provides 85% of the Nile's waters, but receives nothing. Egypt contributes 0% but has received the lion's share of it. Last but not least, GERD will pull millions out of poverty. GERD will ensure that Ethiopia will meet the UN's development goal on energy. For those reasons, GERD is a project everyone needs to support.
Muhammad Buhari do solemnly swear that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
At least 70 people have died and more than 1,200 people have been arrested after days of riots and looting across South Africa. Protests began after former President Jacob Zuma turned himself in on July 7 to police to serve a jail term for contempt of